Hi everyone, I'm Ben, and this is the Board Game Blueprint. This week we're going to do a component close-up on dice, and not just how they can be used in games, but a little bit about maybe why we might use them as well. So dice, as maybe we know, can be great randomizers, but other games that we'll go into also use them in other awesome ways. So we'll dive right into a couple tried and true and innovative ways that dice have been used in games, and if I've missed any, please leave them in the comments. Board Game Blueprinters, roll out! Dice come in a variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. Probably the stereotypical white D6 comes to mind, but here I'm illustrating a marbled kind of texture from a sample that I got from Panda Games Manufacturing. So from left to right, we have a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, and a D20. Now I believe the D stands for dice, and the number is the number of sides that the die has. So here they've added a little bit of customization and cutesiness with a custom panda face on the highest value of these dice, and that kind of paves the way for a thematic reason to make custom faces on your dice. One such example are the custom dice that the game crafter can create, as we saw in the printing video by David Shepard, and, well, I guess that's about it for right now. But as we see on the left and right, we have an acrylic painted die and a laser cut wooden die, both of which are possible and come in a variety of colors. The acrylic, I believe, comes in blue, red, black, and white, while the wooden die can be a dark or a light wood. Now, of course, each side can kind of be customized to have its own sort of face, some of which can be left blank for whatever effect or mechanic is appropriate for your game. I did say a variety of colors and sizes, right? So I really like kind of tiny dice because you can roll a bunch of them all at once, and it just feels really good to hear them clacking in your hand as you're kind of shaking them up. But bigger dice or larger dice, as we kind of see here on the right from my friend Zach's prototype lots, offer a really great chunky feel. A nice weight when you roll it onto the table. It can also be really helpful to have larger dice for games that are targeted at a younger audience, because that way it'll be a little bit less easy to lose the dice, as well as for those little hands to kind of get excited about grasping onto something and then just dropping it onto the table. Now, I also forgot to mention this custom sticker die that I printed off for my copy of Zombicide, the Green Horde, where again you can create custom faces specific to your game. One more thing that I can mention is even the corners of the dice might be important. We see here on this tiny, I think it's a 10mm die, there are kind of these sharper corners around it, while this 12mm die is a little bit rounder, and I believe this custom wooden one is even rounder still. So that can offer a tactile distinction between your game and other games that may also use dice. Now let's get to some real-world examples. One of my favorite games to introduce new players to is Sagrada, which uses these translucent small mini dice, as I said earlier, easy for rolling, to drop onto the table, and their see-through or almost clear nature provides an awesome thematic element into the stained glass window creation game. The numbers here are used as a sort of puzzle where you are limited to how you can place certain dice around each other in a fashion similar to Sudoku, where no two numbers can be adjacent and no two colors can be adjacent to each other as well. When the game's complete, you get a nice, hopefully finished window. Another game that uses translucent dice, but to a larger scale that is in size, is Quantum. Now the numbers in Quantum on the die indicate what sort of ship it is, set in a space universe, that provide different movement and strength abilities. I thought this was a really neat aspect as well, so that the game didn't have to rely on custom meeples or miniatures that then saved a lot on the cost production. In my friend's design lots, you'll roll the supply die to determine, well, which of these tetraminals you'll add to your building supply. On a question mark, you, as a player, get to choose which one you want to use, and then, on your turn, you'll be able to build one from your personal bank onto the footprint of the tower without knocking it over. So the die here is sort of used as a similar puzzle element or as a determinator for figuring out what you get for your game. In a similar way, dice can be rolled to maybe determine different actions on your turn. I myself was working on a game with some friends where you rolled dice and then allocated them based on the icons for what you could do as a robot dinosaur. Varying success rates can be done based on the customization of the dice, so you might even have a die that has a lower chance of success, but with a higher payout that could be indicated with different icons on it, or maybe used with different colors of the die. Perhaps one of the first dice mechanics that players are introduced to ever in their lives is roll the move, where you roll the dice to determine how many spaces you can move on the track. But players aren't so keen on it because it's too deterministic and players don't really have the agency to choose those number of spaces. A couple ways that might mitigate the mechanic, because it is just such a natural thing that people learn at a very young age, is to roll those two dice and allow players to perhaps choose one of the two. I know I just started a D&D campaign, and when you roll advantage, you roll two dice and get to keep the higher result because generally it's better for you. Another way to mitigate this is to possibly have two dice and have one of them be dictated for perhaps one direction and another for the opposite in a grid-based game along the two different axes, X and Y. Some friends of mine, Katie and Jess, have designed a game that uses such a way, where the two dice are color-coded corresponding to the X and Y axis respectively. I wonder if another version of this game could be done with maybe a Z plane as well, so that there's even more dimensionality, where you can go up, down, left or right, or top, bottom, like in 3D chess. One other possibility might be for two dice to be rolled, and one could be used for movement, while the other, perhaps a number, could correspond to a different effect or power that the player might have access to. This way, you could switch between the two in case one was better in a certain situation than the other. The standard acrylic die is one that people have come to expect and won't necessarily blow them all away. Sure, it might come in a couple different colors to perhaps be assigned to different players, but if you want to start to wow some socks off, you might consider something like a wooden die. In the game Jamaica, they have these two large wooden dice that consequently have custom faces on them as well as numbers that really offer a cool tie with the pirate theme, in that acrylic didn't really exist back in those days. Another neat effect is the marbling that we saw earlier. And this one is sort of something I think that a lot of people attribute to a premium sort of component or a premium feel of dice. There are also metal ones that are perhaps the cream of the crop. Unfortunately, I don't own any of those yet. But the marbling gives a really cool, cloudy sort of feel. So maybe if something's a little bit more esoteric about your design, you might consider using an acrylic die. And then, of course, we have the translucent die, which is one where the light can shine through. As we saw, it's a great effect in Sagrada. And to call back to Quantum, which uses a somewhat translucent die, can offer a sci-fi kind of theme. In conclusion, dice can be used in a variety of ways in board games, such as the actual figures per Ryan's, game Quad Heroes, or Gabe's game, The Final Flicteer. Dice can be used as ways of assignment in games for movement or perhaps for actions. Dice can also be used as puzzle elements in games to offer limitations or restrictions and thus burn the brain a little bit. And dice can also just be used because they look nice. In conclusion, I love dice. And again, I'm sure I'm just scraping the tip of the iceberg when it comes to dice and how games might be using them, especially in the future. But for now, that's been our video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date on our future content like this. As always, I'm Ben. This has been another episode of the Board Game Blueprint. And together, let's build something great.